Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. Today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast, we're joined by Lorinda LeClain, Athens County native and longtime librarian with the Athens County Public Libraries. As caretaker of the local history department in Nelsonville, Lorinda has spent nearly 3 decades preserving the region's stories. Her new book, Hidden History of Athens, Ohio, uncovers the forgotten people, industries, and events that shaped the area's past. I hope you enjoy this conversation today with Lorinda LeClain. Well, Lorinda, thank you so much for joining me today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here with me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. I'm going to start with a question I ask all of our guests because I'm always very curious about what gets our guests into the career and drives them either to be genealogists or historians, or in your case, historian/librarian. So talk to me about what it was in your life that led you to where you are.
I started out, back in high school, we had to do a family tree for our maybe junior year. We had to do that for an English class. And I always liked history, even as a kid. But then I really got into it because you had to research your family and write your paper on that. And it just snowballed from there. And it really got me into doing family research. And I also like to research old buildings and areas and just kind of where that started at.
That kind of gets me to kind of my first question about the book, Hidden History of Athens, Ohio. What was it that inspired you to kind of tackle that subject?
I had done a book for Arcadia on Nelsonville, Ohio, which is my hometown, and that's been like 10 years ago. Well, then they were searching for people to do. They gave me 4 different types of titles. I think one was like ghost stories, one was a cookbook, then there was like the hidden history. So I kind of went with that because I feel like there's a lot of I'd gotten into like the little coal mining towns and all their names, and I'd wanted to know where they came from, why did they give this town this name, or, who lived here. So it kind of went from that. And then they said, well, hidden history would be more of the route to go for the book title.
Now you're a lifelong resident of Athens County, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How did your personal connection kind of to the area shape the way you researched and went about writing your book?
Well, even though I've lived here all my life, I learned a lot. And in my job, I do a lot of research for people. A lot of it's genealogical research, but they'll say, I live in this old house and I want to know more about it. Or, I want to know about an old building in town or even an area. So that it's kind of, I've always been doing research for everybody else.
And that's in your role at the library, correct?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I did this book on my own because they had emailed me and said, "Oh, we're looking for another writer." And I thought, well, I'll do this.
Was there, when you started to tackle the book, was there a particular story that was the spark for it, or a place?
I had seen an article on the 1907 flood that went through Athens County.
Okay.
And I knew a little bit about when it went through Nelsonville, but then I started reading about Athens. It was catastrophic. And at first they said, "Oh, that's almost like murder and mayhem." They're murder and mayhem. But yeah, I learned a lot, and I used a lot of high universities like digital archives. His name was W.E. Peters, and he was a surveyor back in the 20s, 30s, and he did like a chapter on each township. So I got to reading all his stuff, and I was like, oh, it'd be great to elaborate on a lot of this. He wrote about all the different little cemeteries and Indian mounds, that kind of thing, in his scrapbook, I guess you could call it.
Okay. And that was at Ohio State University, you said, or the Ohio History Connection?
It was Ohio University in their archive.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Right there in Athens.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. Now, in your role as kind of the local history department, person, did
Uh-huh.
that kind of influence your approach to how you uncovered the stories, or was it just pretty straightforward?
Yeah, well, with a lot of the research I've done over the years, I kind of knew where to start digging at, and old newspapers is another one. We have a subscription to the newspaper archive
Hmm.
and some of the other local newspapers, and you can really find stories that nobody really knows about that was in the local newspaper. So, like the flood, that's where I had gone down a whole rabbit hole when I started looking up the flood of the 1907 flood. There was a lot of stuff in like the Athens Messenger at that time.
That kind of leads me to kind of my next question, which is, what were the kinds of records that you relied on the most when you were doing your research?
I did rely a lot on the newspaper. I'm always using the census, any of the local history books. Like we have one that was written about the Hocking Valley back in 1883, and then again, like William E. Peters, who was a surveyor, he wrote a lot of stuff that if he hadn't documented a lot, we probably wouldn't know half of what we know now.
Hmm.
He did in the
That kind of gets me, were there sources? I mean, you mentioned Peters, obviously. Were there sources like his or others that revealed kind of surprising stuff to you that you didn't kind of expect to find?
I ran across a lot of different articles, and probably the newspaper is my second most go-to resource. But a lot of people have not written like the old coal mining towns. There was not much written about them.
Hmm.
So a lot of it was stuff that I had never heard of when I started digging around.
Were there kind of oral histories and family histories that you relied on at all?
Not not as much. No. Now there was some like oh, I didn't really do much on the Millfield mine disaster because somebody already covered that, but there have been some written oral histories on that
Okay.
happened.
Well, you have to explain it now to our listeners. What was the Millfield mine disaster?
It took place here in Athens County, Millfield. It was in 1930. There
Hmm.
was an explosion in the mine, and it was one of the um bigger ones around here. There was 88 men that were killed.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it was pretty well known in this area. But there's been a lot kind of written over time on that. And somebody else had already done another Arcadia book. So I kind of stayed away from doing a chapter on that because it's been
Hmm.
covered.
Sure. Did you end up, was there anybody you kind of set up a kind of a collaborative relationship with on the book that you bounced some of your ideas off of and some of the stories just to kind of flesh them out?
Um, Trying to think. Not. I really just dug around in the newspapers. It was just kind of I just took off with it. And I had already thought about some of the stuff or had written down a lot about like
Hmm.
the little towns in each township.
Hi, everyone. Noel Poirier here, Executive Director of the Ohio Genealogical Society and your host for the Ohio Roots podcast. Did you know you can help preserve the past and empower the future? Your donation to the Ohio Genealogical Society helps protect vital family history records and supports research for generations to come. Visit www.ogs.org/donate and give today. Thank you so much for your support. Join us on Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, for the Mavernine Harshman OGS Librarian Day, a special event at the Ohio Genealogical Society Library designed for librarians, society members, and anyone passionate about genealogy and local history. The day begins with a collaborative session on successful genealogy programming ideas led by the Northeast Ohio local family history librarians, and the afternoon continues with a panel discussion on how libraries support genealogical research in today's evolving landscape. A guided tour of the OGS library and archives rounds out the day with opportunities for independent research and exploration. Whether you're looking for a programming inspiration, research strategies, or community connection, this event offers valuable takeaways for all. For more information and to register, visit the OGS events calendar at www.ogs.org/events. Were there moments when you're kind of researching one of your hidden history stories where you just kind of hit a wall, like we call in genealogy a brick wall, but that it was hard to kind of get some of the information you needed? And what story would that have been?
Um, I'm trying to think of which one. There was some of the like I went township by township,
Hmm.
And there was some of the more rural townships that there wasn't much written down about them.
Okay.
So that took a little more digging. Like Athens and York Township, which is where Nelsonville is. There's a
Okay.
lot fewer the bigger towns, but some of the ones that were more, just farming country, there was not much that I could write about on them. There just wasn't much
Sure.
happening there.
Now, would I be incorrect to say that the Underground Railroad plays a part in your book at all?
There is a big part on the
Yeah.
Underground Railroad.
What talk to me a little bit about Athens County's kind of role and its place in that story.
Well, the village of Albany played a big part in the Underground Railroad, which probably a lot of people don't realize. But they were kind of on the trail, like the people that were coming up from, let's see, like Ironton and Gallipolis in that area. Then they could come up through Albany. So there was actually a history written down. The lady had wrote one about the African Americans of Albany, Ohio. I
Hmm.
think she wrote it in the 50s.
Okay.
And I did pick up a lot of leads from that one. So I guess you could kind of say it was kind of an oral history from the 1950s. Um, there was all kind of interesting stories that she had documented again that nobody would have ever known. And then I went into the newspaper and dug around in obituaries. I did
Hmm.
look up some of the people. So yeah, Albany played a big part. Another town is in Amesville.
Okay.
And then they were going from Amesville to like Morgan County on over. So that was another one of the trails.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of Underground Railroad history in Amesville also.
Since we talked a little about one aspect of it, tell me a little bit how is the book organized? Is it organized geographically? Is it organized by subject matter?
The first part of it is organized by each township. So
Okay.
I kind of gave each township a little history.
Okay.
And then there's ones on like the 1907 flood. Morgan's raid was something that went through,
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
and the Underground Railroad. There was a place called Humphrey Park around Coolville that I found very interesting. It had been kind of like a little church camp, and a lot of Civil War soldiers had gathered there too after the war. So there was different topics that stood out to me that nobody had ever covered in any of the other books
Hmm.
that I found pretty interesting.
Since in your role as kind of the local history librarian and genealogist librarian, what advice do you give people who come in who are researching their ancestors in Athens County and in southeastern Ohio in general?
I always tell people to kind of start with themselves, ask if they have any other relatives that's still living, and to start with them. And obituaries are a good source. Like we have anywhere from like 1900 to present. The Ohio Historical Society there, or the Ohio History Center in
Mhm.
Athens, they had done like obituary books back years ago. And then there's, like I said, the history of the Hocking Valley is a good source. I always have them start in there. If their people have been around, you know, in 1880s and back, that's
Sure.
another source. So we have a lot of, and I've saved a lot of newspaper clippings over the years of the
You,
history.
you mentioned Ohio University. Are there other specific Athens County kind of archives or collections or repositories that are good for your research or for doing genealogical research?
The Southeastern Ohio History Center has like all of the southeastern Ohio counties, um, and they have a genealogical library there too. They're not open as many hours as we are. Like we're open whenever the library's open, the room is open. I'm there part time, um, so we have a little room at the Nelsonville library, and then some of
Mhm.
our branches have maybe a shelf full of history books too. And then of course OU, and that's I think there is oh there's the African American one that Mr. Butcher has started. I think it's over around the Kilbert area.
Okay.
He's
And
got
what
a
is
little.
what is that about?
I think it's the people of color.
Okay.
He started over there
Okay.
fairly recently, but that
Well,
plays
that's
a big.
interesting. Um, When you're at the library working with folks, uh, do do you get the sense that there are young people that are coming in that are getting interested in history or genealogy?
There are. I know when I first started, it seemed to be the older generation.
Hmm.
Like I was fairly young when I started there, but yeah, there are more and more people coming in to do research. Especially like I'll have ones that they'll buy a house and they want to know the history of their house. Is one of my big things. That's what I
Okay,
get of the younger people.
that's interesting. That's of interest to them more than most things. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Now you spent your life in Athens County. Um,
Right.
has your perspective on its history kind of evolved over the period of time that you've lived there?
I I learn something new every day. I feel like even when you're in one place for so long, you think you discovered everything, but writing this book, I found out there was a lot of things that I did not know. I've learned quite a bit about.
What if you were to write a follow up book on this? Are there themes or eras that you'd want to pursue after having written what you've already done?
I think I would like to focus on maybe some interesting people I've come across that live here.
Mhm. Like who?
Um, well, I guess well one of the things this is really crazy, but there's an old cemetery here in town in Nelsonville, and over the years I've collected a lot of stuff on it, and there's a lot of interesting people in it. Like there's some U.S. colored troop. I think there's 3 or 4 guys that was in the U.S. colored troop, and then there was some of the local like Daniel Nelson. He was the founder of the town. He's up there. There's several business people over time in the early years. Like they only used
Hmm.
that cemetery like 1890, I believe.
What do
That's
you when somebody reads your book, especially those people who have family in Athens or doing genealogy on Athens County, things like that? What are you hoping they kind of take away from it?
um that they'll learn. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think that they will learn about a lot more about like how these little towns have come about.
Hmm.
That was how I started on all this. Was we had a lot of coal mining, and people would come in and say, "I have this death certificate, and it tells there's this town listed on there, and I've never heard of it." And that was part of the beginning of this book, is how I came across why I wanted to write it. I think that will help people too, like where I went township by township, and I've listed like some of these towns no longer exist. There's nothing there. Like there's a road named Glen Evan that goes near Movies 10, which is a big movie theater here between Nelsonville and Athens. There's a little road called Glen Evan, and at one time there were 200 residences there during the
Hmm.
coal mine. Now there's nothing. There's a bike path crosses. That's it.
That's crazy. That's
So
crazy.
I think I'm hoping people will learn about all the little towns that were here that are not don't
I think
even exist.
you kind of answered my last question for you, which is what does hidden history mean? And I think that little town of 200 people that's disappeared seems to be the epitome of what hidden history means. So is that what it kind of meant to you?
Yeah, yeah, because growing up here all my life, like the little road names. How did this road name come about?
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think of the other one. Oh, like Eclipse. Now there is an Eclipse company store that has a restaurant in it and like brewery type stuff.
Mhm.
And they've kind of redone some of that, but there was so much more. That was such a
Right.
bigger little town at one time.
Now, I've only driven through Athens County briefly, taking my son down to OU for a visit. And I could see what you're saying, how these towns just kind of have disappeared over time as you drive through, particularly if you take the back way into Athens. Um,
Yeah,
is that something that you're hoping you've been able to kind of salvage by writing this book?
exactly. That was my whole purpose from the beginning. Is I started just taking notes a while back, on all these little towns because they're not going to be remembered very well if we don't, document it.
Right. Well, Lorinda LeClain, thank you so much for joining me today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast to discuss your book, Hidden History of Athens, Ohio, which is now available through the Arcadia Publishing and the History Press. So thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd really like to thank Lorinda for sharing these fascinating stories and for helping us see Athens County's past in a new light. Her work reminds us just how much local history connects to family history. For listeners who'd like to learn more, be sure to check out Hidden History of Athens, Ohio, available now wherever local history books are sold. Thank you for listening to the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. Curious about your family's Ohio past? The Ohio Genealogical Society is your gateway to uncovering generations of family history. Whether you're a seasoned researcher or just starting your journey, the OGS offers expert resources, local chapters, exclusive online records, online and in-person programs, and a passionate community ready to help you. Join today and bring your family story to life, because your family's history matters. Visit ogs.org to start your discoveries.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Mill Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.